All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. It's good to see you all here. We have a whole bunch of folks coming into the room. You likely may know me. My name is Tyrell. I run operations here at Scoop. I am not the most important person in the room today. I want to introduce our amazing guests who we are just so privileged to have. Rachel and Maya from PV Squared. Hello, you two. Welcome. Good to have you. I'm uh,
Thank
I'm
you.
yeah, I'm so excited for today. I'm yeah, that we have a lot to cover, and as you know, the room is kind of filling up. I think that everyone who's joining here today, we have a whole spectrum, as we always do, right? The goal of these is to have folks who have been with Scoop for a long time, folks who are brand new to Scoop. Maybe today's your first week or first month, really starting to kind of work through this process, and we have folks who are considering whether moving forward with Scoop or kind of building out that operations hub. For all of you, you are in for such a treat today. Today's customer spotlight is going to be a little bit different from the ones in the past, and I think in a really good way. And the reason for that is that PV Squared, like I will rant and rave at a number of points throughout this process because I have just been so amazed at the work that the entire team have done. We have Rachel and Maya here today who have been leaders in the operation in this digital transformation journey. But I mean, they'll be the first to tell you that it really has been a full team effort. Every single person across the organization, top to bottom, bottom to top, side to side. Something that PV Squared. So for a bit of context, we're going to do a formal introduction in a few minutes here. But I think you all are becoming one of the most reputable, well-known, and really known for a level of quality and service in the Northeast United States market across the board, right? And I think one thing that I've really appreciated is it's not because you all are trying to be the biggest or grow the fastest or you know get to any certain size, but it's about you've been so intentional in building resilience, thinking about your systems and processes, bringing your teams together to do that important work side by side versus telling and kind of like forcing things out into the field. It's helped you be more resilient. You've stood the test of time. It sounds like you're at one of the kind of healthiest and most kind of strongest places at the longevity of PV Squared through the pandemic, through the solar coaster that we know has been solar and renewables in the US. And so I think for all those reasons, we're going to talk a little bit about digital transformation and the journey that you all have gone through to get where you are today, because I think that is as important as how you've chosen to build Scoop Out. So a little bit of a long preamble, but obviously you can tell I'm excited for this because I think we all need this. I think we all need this message and kind of the what you're going to walk us through, Rachel and Maya. So thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm going to spend about the next 7 minutes giving you a bit of an introduction. I mean, we're gonna talk a bit about digital transformation. I'm going to introduce Scoop in the lens of this idea of digital transformation, of implementing your operations hub. And then really we're going to open it up to learning more about Rachel and Maya, their journey, about PV Squared and the journey you all have been on. And of course, actually taking a look into the Scoop account. What does this actually look like? It's great to have process maps, but how do we bring it to life? So stick around for the back half of these spotlights. It really is just about giving the stage over to the both of you. So a quick introduction, and I apologize. We're starting with a little bit of the doom and gloom. This is a new slide. It's something that we think about and talk about every day, but it's something that we all have to face, right? It's an important consideration for all of us as leaders, as owners, as operations managers. In 2017, the CIO magazine published a report saying that 33% of all CRM implementations and deployments fail. And that is not like they get half implemented or they get kind of implemented and then 5 years from now we realize, oh, that really didn't work that well. They fail. They fail right dead in their tracks. And my argument or suggestion, encouragement today would be that in the renewable energy space, where we're working with fast-paced, complex projects, multi-teams, multi-geographic region, office and field and subcontractor, that number is probably a lot higher. It is a hard job to build that operations hub, to really set up your systems for success. And the other part of this, I'm about to get off my soapbox in a second, but you don't need a CRM, right? Like I think that's something I know we're sometimes seen as a CRM in Scoop, but you need a CRM for your sales teams, for maybe a bit up funnel in your operation. But hopefully by now you're realizing that CRM, that traditional office-based tool, is not the thing that's going to work out in the field. And hopefully by now as well, you've realized that Scoop, we don't really see ourselves as a CRM. We don't think that's the tool that's needed in this operations hub. And here's why, right? You all probably know what this slide looks and feels like. On one side, we've got our set of tools, our talent, or our tech stack, I should say, and that is the right spot for the CRM, for the design tool, for the accounting tool, so on and so forth. But the challenge becomes when we get into the operational flow of installations or EPC and then O&M and service work, there's so much going on, right? Documentation and documents moving back and forth, pictures, checklist items, compliance, sets of operational procedures. And you're having to pair that with a very multi-team and multi-step process, especially in installation, as well as the fact that not all of your folks are sitting at desks. Probably very few of them are like in the office 24/7 or 5 days a week, so to speak. You have that talent stack that is distributed across field and office, maybe internal team members and subcontractors. And it's for all these reasons that that term CRM just hasn't grown up with where we see the market today and what that operations hub needs to be. So hopefully this is all food for thought as you all are looking at your own operations. For us, we really think about Scoop as the operations hub. It is not going to do some of those things that we talked about, the sales CRM, the accounting platform, the things that we see on the left-hand side, which is your tech stack. Instead, we have our Glue integration platform, right, that connects those seamlessly with Scoop so that the data isn't lost. We don't have people doing copying and pasting. But then where Scoop really shines is connecting each of your teams, internally and externally, in the office, in the field, subcontractors, in the right capacity, in the right scope, so that that everyone's contributing at the right stage of what we think of as like the conveyor belt of operations. And this allows us to kind of bring everything into one single hub and all the benefits that we're going to see about that today. And some of you already are well aware, right, of the customers that are here in the room. Last slide on Scoop, again, high level, and we're blazing through it, is that we continue to really think about the way that we want to support, all of you in the room, our customers and the industry, with an ecosystem of products. So today we're going to really get to see Maya and Rachel talk about the desktop platform of Scoop. We have our mobile application out in the field for all your field teams. I talked about that Glue integration platform and service to connect Scoop with all your other IT tools, your tech stack. We've got a growing number of folks that are using our Look-See analytics platform, which is a business reporting tool. It takes all your raw data and Scoop, that transactional data, and it turns it into visual reports. And finally, we have a number of folks starting to use our inventory management module to give you kind of real-time, inventory needs as well as forecasts. So that's the 10,000-foot landscape. That's all I'm going to talk about on the Scoop side. But I am going to bring this slide back up for 1 second, and then we're going to start to shift over, and Maya and Rachel, really excited to kind of open up the floor to you. But we obsess about this, right? And I can't stress that enough. Like, you can have the best tool in the world, but if no one uses it, right? If you haven't done the work to understand how you can set your teams up for success, it is not valuable, whether it's Scoop or any other tool. And so in part of our journey, I want to share one last slide because we've really been thinking about what does this look like? Practically, what does your journey and your approach to digital transformation need to look like? And our language that we've developed is this concept of like a Scoop Team 6. Some of you, that may sound familiar, right? It's a play on SEAL Team 6. It's this idea that you're bringing the most critical leaders across your organization to go and go on one of the most important missions in your business, which is shoring up and bolstering your foundation of your operation. That's what's going to build resiliency. It's what's going to increase your team experience and your culture. It's in some ways going to be an important part of the set of ingredients that helps you become a company that looks like PV squared, right? Standing the test of time and thriving through a lot of the volatility in the market. Just briefly on this slide, what we see, and the reason why I'm sharing this is I want you all to think about who are these people in your organization before you even think of Scoop or whatever tool or technology you're bringing in. Who are these folks? Do they exist? Are they ready to go on this journey, this mission? On the left-hand side, we've got our Scoop, our implementation lead. I think we're really privileged today to have both Rachel and Maya, who have played integral roles in this at PV Squared. These are the most important folks to be kind of righting the ship and navigating both of the teams, our team or your tool team, your partner, and the internal teams. On the far right-hand side, we've got the decision maker, whether it's an owner, an executive, the champion, right? we need that mandate from top to bottom of the organization, both to hold everyone accountable, but also to champion, right? To cheer us on. Digital transformation, change management can be hard. It can be hard work. So we need that encouragement from the top as well. And in the middle are your functional teams. You may have a sales and site survey team. They need to plug into this process and this exercise. Design and engineering, permitting, interconnection, utility applications, those folks, that critical team in the middle. And then, of course, all your folks doing the work, they need to be a part of this process. So think about, who is that Scoop Team 6, right? Who are you going to be signing up to go on this journey and really being the advocates for your digital transformation process? And again, I'm so excited to hear and learn about how you all navigated that, Rachel and Maya. So let's shift gears and let's do a little bit of a high level intro to PV Squared. I've got a couple of slides here just by way of introduction. So, I talk about standing the test of time on purpose, right? You all were founded in 2002 and you're still here, you're still thriving. That culture is still being refined and I think really, really incredible. I know you're going to talk a little bit about that. You do both installation and service, solar, battery, and there may be a handful of other areas of work that you're doing in the home or in the business, residential and commercial, as I mentioned. And you've built this really, I think, really beautiful team size, right? In that 50 plus team members, it really is a culture that thrives and has its own, feeling and level of fulfillment of its own. So I think that's kind of the big level picture. Rachel or Maya, anything that you would add in terms of just introduction to PV Square at a 10,000 foot level?
Um, we are a worker-owned co-op, so both Maya and I are owners of the company, along with 25 of our friends. So we have 27 worker owners at this time. Our total staff is in the mid 40s right now. And so everyone who comes to work here has a pathway to ownership should they choose to go down that path. It's certainly not a requirement, but it is available to everyone and it is encouraged. And so, the elevator pitch, so to speak, that I would give to a potential client is, you know, there are owners of the company, right? Real stakeholders in the long-term success of the company at every stage of the project. And so you talk about getting those stakeholders in the room. In our case, those stakeholders are also literally the owners and operators of the company. So we practice, democratic decision making. That does mean we have a lot of meetings. That also means we have a lot of points of handoff. And so, a software like Scoop really helps to facilitate that collaboration. But we're a very different company than many others and many others in the solar sphere. So it's exciting, and I think growing from 4 founders in 2002 to 27 owners now is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. Maya, anything you would add just by way of kind of introduction?
Um, just that as a worker-owned cooperative, working with each other and not having a strict hierarchy, finding tools that enable collaboration and help hold us and each other accountable when there isn't somebody breathing down your neck with the next thing has been incredibly valuable for us to have positive relationships and positive outcomes with each other as a team.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I'm really excited because I think there's something that we can all learn from you all in the journey you've been on, and you've got so many of the right cultural ingredients. And I also know that that doesn't mean it's easy, right? Like it doesn't mean that the journey is easy and that you all work really hard to have those conversations and get in the room, almost do the slow work in service of setting the long game and kind of the fast pace up for success. And so maybe I want to just take a minute to brag about, because it's not, you all are, yes, you have a co-ownership model, you're in a co-op, you have this incredible culture, but you also are doing amazing work, right? Like, so I think that the outcome can also speak to the quality of inputs that you all have really put together in terms of ingredients. So in the last year or so, this is just a sampling, a taste of the work that the PV Squared team at large has accomplished. 2,300 job sites, physical locations managed, nearly 350 projects executed, 2,000 scoops. Those are like service visits, phases of your project executed. And I think the one that's really amazing, right? Over 1 million data points transacted. And when I saw that number, I just thought, wow, like, think about that's all of the documents, the checklist items, the communication points back and forth, the handoffs between installation to service. That's what it takes to do this type of volume, to really be, you know, successful in terms of running this size of an operation. Imagine what would happen if you didn't have the operations hub to hold those million different touch points that are required for a successful project in one place, right? And that's where we use this term of like, you know, kind of sometimes death by 1,000 inefficiency cuts. Sometimes you can't even see because there's so many touch points, so many data points. So I love that idea, Maya, that, you know, Scoop has really just become a container to help you all continue to drive forward your cultural kind of non-negotiable processes and values into a way that allows you to do really effective work. And like holding 1 million data points to transact, you know, 350 projects across 2,500 job sites is pretty incredible. So first and foremost, just a huge kudos to you. I'd like to, at this point, just pause and stop sharing my screen. And even, I mean, we jumped ahead a little bit, but maybe go backwards a little bit and hear about either both of your journeys in PV squared, as well as the lead up to Scoop, right? In this decision, this journey that you all started with digital transformation. What were some of the things that you started noticing, the opportunities to say, you know, now is the time where we really need to move into the next level of our, you know, operational growth? So either Rachel or Maya, I'll kind of hand it over to you for that more broad-based introduction to yourselves in PV squared.
I've been delegated. Yeah, so when we found Scoop, we were at a position where we were using a number of different tools, as you know, is very much the story of many Scoop successes. So for a new sale, we would start in Salesforce. We would create, you know, a proposal using a Word doc. After that sale had been executed, the salesperson would download all of their thoughts and all of the project specifics into a static Word document that would then be edited throughout the project. And that Word doc lives on our, you know, internal server. So if you're trying to access, oh, I can't remember the, you know, GC who's working on this project, you're actually accessing a static document on a server. And, you know, you may not be able to do that from a phone if you're traveling or wherever. So that was kind of the repository of the sort of brain dump information. And then everything was rolling into what was essentially a massive Google sheet that we had created that Maya was instrumental in as our project management tool. And it worked very well for the things that we had it doing, but, you know, it was very susceptible to breakage because it was a Google sheet and, you know, all of these, oh gosh, I, you know, typed over something in a field name and now everything's broken. So there was a lot of maintenance and there was a lot of double entry. There was a lot of, you know, mistrust of whether the information was real. And that then is going to lead to inefficiencies in the field, bad feeling between, you know, field workers and office workers of saying, you know, my time is valuable out here. I climbed up on that roof and I didn't have the tools I needed to actually do my job. And then when we're coming back, you know, after the job is installed, going, what did we do, right? How do we now track down any changes that were made and all of the kind of as-built things? So a lot of that was very manual. But from my perspective, because I work in sales and service, I didn't see any of that, right? So none of the pain points were really in my work. And what I was looking for was a software to run our field service work specifically. We've been using Salesforce. They have some tools for that. You know, so we were just vetting all sorts of different options. And then we discovered Scoop through an Amicus O&M call from another Amicus member who's using Scoop for their service team. And I said, oh, this is cool. We can, you know, I was envisioning this teeny little nugget of Scoop land that we would do our service work in. And other folks here at the organization said, wait, but what if this is the answer to all of our problems? And lo and behold, it was a much bigger project than I intended to undertake, but had Maya by my side and many other supporters at the organization.
Yeah.
I could add one other element which you started on, which was the handoffs of information. We had no mechanism for handoffs. So it was a hodgepodge of how does it get from one person, one team to the next, with lots of parallel actions. And it meant that we had really efficient data transfer between people and departments. And stuff was lost in that transfer all the time, like every day. And it was a slow gravy train from one person to the next across those transfers of information. And then because of the loss of information, people were doing the same thing twice, 3 times, 6 times. By the end of a project, one person might have created the same document or image 3 or 4 times because it was lost in translation. So we were doing good work. We were getting things done. It took longer, took a lot more effort, and there was a lot more duplication. And so how do we address that? And here we are today with a scoop implementation, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, beautiful, well said. And I'm sure there's a number of folks in the room whose ears are burning in terms of some of those challenges that are like very, very real and a natural part of the growth journey. I think there's 2 things in our conversations, Rachel and Maya, that I've really appreciated, and I think it's kind of where we're going to get to start this conversation. And you had mentioned it right there, Rachel, which was, we started with thinking about service, and service was almost like this low-hanging fruit or pressure point that we could address really quickly. And you all turn that into, I think, a very strategic lever in terms of how to think about implementing Scoop. So let's talk a little bit about like how you started to tee that up, and then maybe the bigger elephant in the room, so to speak, for other companies is, okay, we have our painful but working processes today that we know they're starting to break, they're gonna break, like that cliff is coming. And now we have this new way of doing things, this new kind of light, the what could be, and whether that's Scoop or another operations hub. But there is a gap in the middle, which is how do we refine and define those processes? And then how do we digitize them or bring them to life in Scoop? And I think, to be honest, like no one teaches us how to do that. There's no gold standard way of doing that in the industry, at least as far as what we've seen today. And I think that's where you all created some magic in your journey. And so, this potentially could be a good time to actually jump into that. And Rachel, you're welcome to share your screen. I mentioned this is going to be a little bit different, where we actually, and Rachel and Maya have been willing to kind of talk through the step before implementation, which is actually one of the most critical ones to get right. And it's the easiest one to skip because it's almost a mirage. It's invisible. It's not there until you realize, oh shoot, we should have done this work beforehand. So I'll hand it over to you. I know I kind of teed up 2 different topics, but I think they're a little bit related, and I know it'll start to come to life as you share the visuals that you've all put together.
Yeah, I'll jump in to some of our sort of early process mapping work. And I just want to give a quick peek to, this is a document, this is just an example of a process map, a linear process map that we utilize for every single team and every single piece of what we do at PV Squared. So, we had these long meeting sessions, we call them retreats, and all the PMs sit around a table and go, okay, how do we actually do our job? How do we actually go from point A to point B? And it forces us to be honest with each other. It forces us to be vulnerable. We have to, air our dirty laundry, so to speak, and say, yeah, I do this thing in a really backwards way because nobody ever showed me how to, build the Excel formula, or, whatever those little things are that we know are inefficiencies in our own process, but we just sort of muddle through because we care about the end result, and we just, by sheer force of will, make it work, right? So we sat down and we did a process map like this for every single aspect of our business. And then when we came to actually build out Scoop, those process maps turned themselves into this beautiful rainbow of our Scoop phases. And so this is basically the map of how our Scoop organization is actually organized. And so each of those processes is addressed in each of the ways that these scoops are built out. And I know this is too small for anyone to actually see. Maybe that's on purpose. You can't see our secret sauce, but this is really the guidebook to Scoop, to how we're using Scoop. And so it's showing, each Scoop, each project phase, each workflow stage within those Scoops, when different Scoops get launched. And one thing when we rolled this out, just to diverge for a moment, is almost every person at PV Squared has a large printout of this at their desk. And so it's a really good, oh, wait, I can't remember who does this thing here or there or whatever. We have, Scoop by Scoop versions of this where it's showing each of the, automation points, each point where a person needs to do, a physical process. And so by doing that kind of deeper work and by really spending the time to look at and analyze and assess what we were doing and why we were doing it, we were able to, build a better system. I don't think that we would have been as successful as we've been with this software if we didn't take that time. And it is an investment of time. It's an investment of brain power. People really need to get on board for spending that time. And that's partly where the co-op model fits in well, because, we can all see the value and choose to invest the time, because we understand that you get out what you put in to software, to the work that we do, right? So that sort of fits well with what we're doing. Anything I missed there, Maya, feel free to jump in. I feel like I'm in ramble mode now.
That was great. Yes, that's great.
Yeah, I think that was great as well. And I think there are a couple things for me, like, this really is the concept of going slow to go fast. And one thing that I was surprised in one of our earlier conversations, I looked at this amazing documentation aspirationally, as maybe others are in the room, which is exactly why, I'm so grateful that you're willing to share a bit of this. But then I asked both of you, how long did it take to go through this exercise? Now, with the caveat that you all have this ingrained in your culture, which is, again, some of that secret sauce, the intangible value of the team that is at PV Squared. But I was surprised by the answer, in terms of y'all sitting down and being able to go through this. So maybe just speak a little bit to, like, what did the actual process look like? You talked about those retreats. How long would it take for you to put together even like one phase, and even maybe the service phase as an example?
Yeah, so service is a good example. This is a 10-page Google Doc, and it's literally just one type of service ticket. This is, customer phone call through invoicing, through total closeout of an RMA, of an inverter or an optimizer, module RMA. So it's the teeniest bit of what we do, and it's 10 pages. And that was probably, 3 hours in a room with 4 people. Which was our service team at the time. So each team and each process would have taken a different amount of time. But usually it's a couple hours, and getting the right people in the room and making sure that people really know what they're signing up for in that moment, and have the vernacular, the tools to participate fully, was important. So someone found a really cool YouTube video that I'm sure Tyrell and Lucy can help us share with you all, that
Yeah.
is it's a really good overview of how to do a good process map. And the key is that you map the process as it is today. You have to be really honest, like brutally honest, with the things that you don't do well, rather than trying to solve it in the moment or gloss over it in the moment. As far as our scoop build out goes, and sorry if I'm jumping to the next thing here, but we started by building out our service scoop. And so I knew, like, I was living and breathing this every single day. I knew exactly what I needed it to do and be, and all of the pain points. I was already very much elbow deep in our tech stack for service. And so we built that not only to start being able to utilize Scoop quickly, and right, we had a real need for a software solution in the moment, but also as a proving ground and a sort of testing ground and a sandbox for how we were going to build out the rest of the org. Our service scoop, this is just the in-depth version of the service scoop, is basically a micro version of a whole project. And so each of those workflow stages, permitting, material procurement, scheduling, all of that stuff, those are all things that happen on the project level, but we just mushed them in. So we learned about, global fields and conditional display rules. And we also were able to hone in on what were the outputs that we needed from a project that would be the inputs for a service case 5 years, 10 years down the line. So this was a great way to sort of embark into our Scoop build out in this micro way.
Okay. Awesome. Anything else that either of you want to share on any of these slides? And then I think that was actually a really great segue, maybe to start to actually look at, okay, what does this look like coming to life? And again, I want to maybe tee up as we shift from Rachel to Maya, that like, I love, okay, you talked about the Scoop Team 6, right? Your team's in the room, in that room. They have to be signed up. They have to know what they're signing up for, and they have to have the language and tools to contribute. I also love the fact, something that we're really advocating for more and more, is that you all found a really effective way to start simple and start small and learn the tool, understand the bridge between the process and the living documentation, which is the back end of Scoop. And you did that by starting in service, learning a whole bunch really fast, adding value to the team, but then being able to roll all of those learnings into your larger build out of the whole installation pipeline. And so I think that's a really important mechanism as well, is how do you start small? How do you start simple? And then how do you learn and grow as the tool evolve? Every leader that we've had on these spotlights has shared the exact same thing in their own flavor. Just really briefly, as we transition into the Scoop account, I know we've mentioned, I've heard you mention global fields or client side fields, conditional display rules. Were there any other really important features, either when you were looking at Scoop originally, or that you've come to realize, hey, that thing, that is so valuable? I'm just curious from like a kind of feature set perspective, if there's anything else that comes to mind. Those are two really good ones.
Yeah, I guess for me, the conditional display rules coupled with the global fields, right? They have to go together. And when we were building out our org, the project fields aspect, it wasn't fully baked yet, right? So you can now do conditional display rules in the project field space. When we were building it out, that was not the case. So we have some global fields that really should be project fields. We don't need them later on, and we'll work with the team to transition that. But they work hand in hand, and one of them without the other would not have the same impact. When I am, because I also am working in Salesforce on a day-to-day basis, as sort of, one arm in one side, one arm in the other. I'm wishing that I had conditional display rules on that side, right? Now, when I go in to do Salesforce development work, which has so many great things also that are very different, I really want CDR. I'm like, wait, but why can't I just have this only show up if that thing that so I've become accustomed to that as a tool, and I want it everywhere.
I love it. Yeah, and I just wanted to show this slide, and I know Maya, you're up next to take the screen, so feel free to tee that up. But I know global fields, or what we call client site fields. I love how you describe that. Actually, they really go hand in hand. And for those of you who are brand new to Scoop and like these terms aren't really going to make sense, I just wanted to anchor us in this architecture, which is every Scoop customer, every team, all of us in the room here today, you all will resonate with this. Every one of your projects has a physical location. In Scoop, we call those client sites. And we actually want to equip our customers to be able to build documentation and repositories, think, information about the actual physical location that will not likely change from project to project. So we call those global fields. We call those client site fields. What Rachel was describing there is, over the years, we've now introduced this concept of projects. So you can now have individual and multiple projects all rolled up under the same client site. And those projects may have their own unique documentation that is going to be different from one project to the next, but needs to all be housed under one single client site. And where the conditional rules then come in, again, think about 1 million data points in just over, a year and a half. If you try and, I think the Salesforce example is a good one. Like, there are views out there where if you try and show all of that, the whole client site record, to a site surveyor out in the field, like, good luck helping them find the needle in the haystack of that one picture they need to take. So the idea that, hey, on this site, we are going to be installing a battery or an EV charger. There's a certain electrical run that we have to do, and we need the site surveyor to take these specific pictures based on the scope that we sold in Salesforce that came in through the Glue integration. The goal of that conditional display rule is that you're really teeing up each of your teams down in the individual work to be done, the scoops, with only the information they need, right, to be able to effectively close out their phase and move it on through the automation to the next one. So with a little bit of that intro context, Maya, I would love to hand it over to you. And now we get to kind of take a look, and let's go all the way back, I think, to the start, maybe, and see, how did you all translate this into Scoop and some of the key areas?
Thanks, Tyrell. Yeah, so Rachel was sharing this slide, and just wanted to start here again because all of these are unique scoops, and we've set our structure up where each team or individual within a team is going to be working in their own scoop. And so we were able to tailor those forms, tailor that bite-sized component of a project for their workflow and show them what they want to see and need to see and not all the other stuff. So the surveyor doesn't need to see about accounting and ordering equipment and all the rest. So our workflow generally is going to move left to right as we see this, starting with sales and moving through designs. Anybody who's built solar knows that it isn't perfectly linear. There's a lot of stuff that's got to all happen in parallel. And you don't want to hold up that process. You want to allow all those parallel processes to move forward. And so for us, when we learned about global fields specifically, we were like, awesome. I can have multiple parallel processes where one person doing one thing over here is going to help and update the data over on the other side. So that was key to us being saying, yes, Scoop is the way we want to go. This is so valuable. So where does that look like? My role at PV Squared is I hold a number of hats, but one is that I see all the new projects that come in. I'm a part of like technical validation for a project. And so a project is sold. Our salespeople trigger glue integrations from Salesforce into Scoop. And then they add a little more detail. I'm the next person that sees that and says, okay, great, we've got a project. Can we build this? Can we implement this project? What else do we need to know? So we're right in here in a live test Scoop that we call Snape Greenfield Test for any of those.
There's a lot of nerds in solar, if
There's a
anyone
lot of
didn't know
nerds
that.
in solar, and specifically at PV Squared. We like that about ourselves.
I want to call out the beautiful emojis that you all have brought into your Scoop account as well. That is definitely a mini point of innovation, but a very fun one and a colorful one at that.
And there's a practical reason for it, which is text is really hard to, like, what's the unique text I'm looking for? When you're looking out in the field on a phone, I just got to look for the picture of the lightning bolt. I know where to go.
Love it.
So combination of text and pictogram. Anyways, so new project lands in my lap. I'm so excited when a new one comes through. I'm going to then evaluate, okay, what's the contract? What are the photos? Are there any specific notes? What's the equipment that was sold with? What's the jurisdiction, utility, all these sorts of things. And I will take this kind of bare bones sold project and add more detail to it and say, okay, great. We're selling a ground mount. That means we need a trench. Okay, so I'm going to go and add this trench into a project. Is there trench work involved? I'm going to go and select that. By clicking that, I've now developed all the way from this point forward. Our surveyor knows they've got to go assess a trench length and maybe mark that out. It builds out a request for a bill of materials, PVC for underground for that trench. Suddenly there's photo fields that will appear in the installation app where the installers have to take open trench pictures and how deep is that and where are the stub ups of the conduit? What's the diameter of that PVC? And then in the logistics app, when we're ordering those materials, they're going to have a queue of materials right from that they will then know what to order. So it's ready to go for install. So one click and suddenly I've built that scope for the life of the project. Let's go see what that actually looks like by doing that. So I'm in this design Scoop, which is where I live and play every day. By doing that, it sets up a scope of work for me as well. I then can go down to our equipment section. I've got all these various pieces of equipment that I have to add details to. And I've got a PVC subgrade section. I've pre-filled this with some data. We found out how long it is. We found that there's no spare conduit, which we would sometimes do. And then I would be pre-building. I have some tools outside of Scoop where I could be pre-building a bill of materials and drop that right in here for our logistics people and the folks ordering those materials. If there was any fancy documentation associated with this scope, not so much with PVC, but a good example here would be a plaque. If we need to order a plaque, I'd then have to go and create that plaque document for ordering and drop it in here. So these scopes will carry forward. So let's look here. We're looking at this design scope. If we were to go over to our install Scoop, so out in the field, the installers have their mobile app. they will have not only the reference documents and the materials they should be having and any particular guidelines for that installation, they also now have those required fields of, in order for them to physically do their work and say, yes, I've checked the box on doing my job, they're required to put in some photos. And the way we've set this up is that anything that's required at that stage of the project or phase within a specific scoop has a requirement to be filled out. And these green bars are going to tell them, hey, have I done what I need to do? And if they don't fill it out and they try to go too far, it'll say, stop, you're missing something. You got to go fix that. But quickly, both on the computer and the phone, we can go find out where we're going. But we're going to go to the trench and foundation section. And I've got all these empty fields ready and waiting for crew people to use their Scoop app and take those photos once they've completed that section.
And
this is true
Maya,
for all of the various aspects, but go ahead, Rachel.
Just to interject one thing on the PV Squared culture side, we, as Maya mentioned before, we don't have someone breathing down their neck, right? And I don't have someone breathing down my neck. So knowing that we've built a scaffolding with the software that guides us as individuals through each stage means that I, as a worker, don't have to have stress and anxiety that I'm going to forget something, have to go back to site, right? Have to, go back on something I said to a client and, spend more time dealing with a thing because it's right in front of me exactly what I need to do. It also means that when there's a point of handoff, there's implicit trust that all of the inputs were put in, right? Because you can't progress the scoop unless you've fulfilled those required fields. So I don't have to question the work of someone when, we're both owners of the company, we're working side by side. Like, we don't have a traditional hierarchy. So, I don't need to check their work because the software is checking their work for me. And I don't need someone to check my work because the software is checking my work for me, right? So it's leveling the playing field as far as accountability, and it's just reiterating the trust that we have of each other. We all have the right intentions, but we can also always forget things. So this is just giving that, putting the boxes out there that you need to fill.
I could show that. Thank you, Rachel. I could keep on showing examples of this, but what I was just showing is a kind of a quick little nutshell of this same process that we've duplicated 100,000 times, it feels like, through Scoop. And by leveraging conditional display rules with this, it means that we can have a concise form that is required information versus a huge long form with where's the thing I actually have to do. This is really focusing people in on their scope.
Yeah, I mean, one just observation I'll make, because now we can start to connect some of the dots between like that go slow to go fast process documentation and how, I mean, I know it's not the topic of today, but I mean, you all have really become kind of master configurators, right? Scoop administrators on the back end. And I mean, you look at this, you're really utilizing so many of the small features that help teams do what they do. But the benefit is, it's great to know, hey, when we're running a ground mount and we need to trench and be putting stuff in the ground, in my process map, where else does that have implications? Okay, here, and here. And like you said, there's, potentially dozens or hundreds of those types of iterations. To be able to look at all of that on a big whiteboard, on a digital document, it becomes very quick to then go and start codifying that, because you've got those global fields or project fields. You've got the conditional rules that can pick up on any of those. And you're literally just kind of going step by step and saying, okay, in my site survey, what do I want my team to do there? In design and engineering, do we need any considerations for that? Over on to install, into inspection. So that cycle that you all described, you've set yourselves up when you were doing this process initially, likely to just set such a great initial bar for the team in terms of implementation and launch. But as we all know, you don't launch it and forget about it. You launch it and you start getting feedback. You start understanding, where can we make improvements or changes? Maybe we bring on a new type of panel or product that we're selling, and we need to actually update our processes to incorporate that. So this idea, I'm sure, and would be happy for either of you to speak to this, of like, part of the value of Scoop is that it is, we think about it as a citizen developer. Like the team in the room are the ones, the operations teams are coding and updating the platform without the need for any IT resources. But that is happening continuously and in small incremental adjustments. Have you noticed that, or would you say that that's been a part of your process? What?
Yes, is the short answer. I think both Rachel and I are making updates to Scoop multiple times every week at a minimum.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just, I'm just adding a new module, or I'm adding a new thing, or I'm fixing a CDR that isn't quite working quite right. Or we might be, hey, we're doing a whole new service scope that has massive implications to this whole process. So yes, ongoing maintenance. And it, stepping back to the beginning, where you were saying 33% of CRMs fail, we have tried to do process mapping and figuring out how to manage stuff many times in the past. It's that aspect wasn't new. We brought a new level of concerted effort to it because we realized there's a solution at the end of this. There's going to be action at the end of this. But the action never stops, as you said, Tyrell. And being dedicated, like, if you want it to function for you, you have to be willing to put in that front end effort, and you have to be able to willing and have people, bodies, and time to keep that maintenance ongoing.
Yeah, well said. Rachel, did you want to add anything to that on your side?
Just when we consider new products or new items that we might be installing, it would be easy to envision like adding a conditional display rule and then a section for, EV charging as like an example that's, current in the market, right? If we said, okay, we're gonna, not just do the circuitry and the wiring, we're gonna actually install the charger, we'd have a checkbox somewhere, a section would appear with a BOM and, photos for the crew to take and all of the things. So we can add discrete scopes of work very easily. Same with, snow guards, right? A client in the middle of the project decides they want snow guards, check a box, all the required fields appear. And the same is true for the service app on the micro level. If I say, okay, I'm going out to do an RMA, but I notice that there's, vegetation management that needs to be done, or there's something else that needs to be done, I can just add a type of work and then a new section appears with the parameters to do that work. So
yeah, it's in some ways it becomes so simple right now that you all have all of that underlying infrastructure in place. I know there's a couple questions that Lucy, you're going to jump in and ask in a second. If there are other questions from the folks in the room, now is the time to drop them into the Q&A. Selfishly, I have 2 more questions that I want to squeeze in quickly here. And then Lucy, will hand it over to you. And first of all, I mean, a huge thank you, Rachel and Maya. I think, like I said, I knew we were in for a treat, and I know you all could go on for days and days, but I think just what you've shared today hopefully will plant some seeds, right, and start those ideas for other operational leaders in here. So, the first question is if you could give and share advice for the folks in the room, right, our peers, our various leaders across the industry, in terms of the journey that you've been on, and maybe one kind of point of advice that you felt like has really helped, guide you as an operational leader through this digital transformation process. Would love if you'd be willing to kind of share one point of insight or advice from your journey.
I mean,
I know it'll be
for
hard to
me,
just pick one.
yeah, for me, I think it's what we've been talking about. It's really the, taking the time to learn and reflect and learn about yourself and what you need. And a big piece of that is listening. And so you may not be able to solve every problem in the first iteration, but being sure to, listen when people bring ideas, log those ideas, have a repository of ideas, come back to those ideas as often as you can, follow up with the person and say, hey, I was able to implement that thing that you asked for in this way, right? Making sure that you're delivering on needs, on at least some of the needs of everyone, has been really valuable for us in adoption, because everyone feels like their needs are being met, at least in a compromised way, right? We can't give everyone everything at all times. And part of that too was saying, okay, where's our level one, right? Like where's our MVP, minimum viable product level? And then we're going to build on that. But we have to achieve this first. So we can't, make it all sunshine and rainbows over here and not have, the actual baseline thing work. So kind of a reality check and just being really honest with ourselves.
Well said.
Maya.
Maya.
That was great. Yeah. I would say from an onboarding perspective, getting buy-in from people, like change is hard. We all know that. Even a year and a half in, every single meeting that we have within our teams has a little section about Scoop. Hey, what's new? What's working? What's not? Don't forget to reset X, Y, and Z. Like it's just a placeholder check-in for us to share what's new and address things coming up. And I feel like that's been really valuable to set the expectation that, hey, we're going to touch on Scoop into off into the future. And it's been incredibly helpful for hearing that ongoing feedback, as well as letting people be heard and fix real problems and introduce real fixes.
Yeah, so many nuggets of wisdom in there. So thank you both for sharing that. Last question for me is, and I'd love this just, if you could kind of share in your own words, in your own experience, how would you describe the value or the impact that Scoop, as it's evolved and been kind of infused across the organization? Like, what does that mean? Whether it's a tangible, quantifiable thing, or it's something that you see that's very intangible but equally valid. I think those are both important. But would love to just hear, how would you describe one of the areas where you're like, yeah, this has really changed the game for us in a meaningful way?
I'll give two little examples. One is I think it encourages buy-in and ownership at different stages in the process, right? People are actively engaged in a way that they weren't before, and people are actively aware of the work that their colleagues are doing in a way that they weren't before, right? So an appreciation for the tools that are given to you to do your job because you can see all the things that were done before, right? So visibility into each other's worlds. I think that really brings up the level of respect and understanding across the organization. From like an ROI perspective, I think a traditional corporate structure might see I can do more work with less people and say, there's dollar value to that. And there certainly is. I would look at it as we can do more work with less headache and heartache and stress, right? We can do more work without breaking the people doing the work. And so being able to, clock out at a reasonable time and go home and actually, have a good night's sleep because I know that I accomplished what I needed to do during the day and I'm not forgetting about 10,000 things has so much value to me as a worker and as an owner of the company. So just being able to, deliver that to my colleagues and co-owners is very satisfying. And it does have a dollar implication as well, right? But it's not like, okay, great, we can, lay off half our staff and do the same amount of work. That's not that's not the point for us, right?
Well, yeah, great, beautiful reframe of that kind of maybe outdated adage in some ways, Rachel. Thank you for sharing that. It is more profitable in the long run, what you just shared. Harder, but you're playing the long game. So really appreciate you sharing that. Maya, what would you share from your perspective?
I mean, building on that, we could share just like the scale of what that actually means is we had this project management process, and at any one time, a project manager could make, like, if they had 20 projects on their plate, they were crying every day. Like that was really hard. Like just way
legitimately crying, not, this
yeah,
isn't a diminutive.
They were not going home early and they were not happy. And now we've effectively doubled that number without the crying.
Wow.
So a project manager that would have been totally overworked with 20 projects can get through up to 40 projects even with a combination of two things. One, we have a process, the handoffs, just the speed, all the things about Scoop that make it real, but it's also the right people are doing the right things once. Whereas before, the project managers, I don't know who's doing what, I don't know where it's at, I'm going to do it too. So that has been incredibly helpful. And then the other piece of they're just not holding projects as long. Like we have cut months out of our project timeline by having this really clean project steps and phases and multiple things happening at once.
Wow. Huge kudos to both of you and the whole team. That's amazing. Okay, we have 5 minutes. Lucy, you're in the hot seat now. And you know how much Rachel and Maya like to share. So pick a couple of questions. And by the way, everyone that's in the room, we didn't talk about service. We didn't get into some of the back end, like automation, CDRs, things like that. So we are absolutely going to have Rachel and Maya back for a second session. So there will be more time to kind of get these questions answered down the road. But Lucy, over to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I echo that. Huge shout out. That was super insightful. We'll try and get through as many questions as we can here. First one is, what were some of the shortcomings of Salesforce that kind of pushed you to use Scoop and need to make that change?
The biggest thing that we were looking for was field data capture transitioning back to desktop, right? It's great for customer management, not as great for actually gathering data in the field. Scheduling, right? Deploying human people in the world was not where our version of Salesforce shone.
Yeah, definitely. And then when you began Scoop, did you start from like kind of that point going forward in terms of like data and customers, or did you import existing customers and old info to kind of like backfill that data into Scoop?
We have every customer since 2002 as a client site in Scoop, because we're providing service for all of those customers.
Incredible. This kind of somewhat relates. Can you explain why like the initial design review, like from Salesforce to Glue, is crucial to ensure like all requirements and all information is identified before any work starts happening?
A both end. So sometimes we'll sell a project, for example, and need to be on site installing a conduit new construction a week after install. So not necessarily. Another example I could have given is, as soon as a new project comes, I'm identifying what's missing and what do we need to find out, and we send surveyors out on site. We might fly a drone, we might measure the roof, we might open electrical panels. Like there's a process of what information do we have? Do we need more information for that project? And we just keep on building on top of that over the life of the project. In a perfect world, everything is checked and ready to go before installers get on site. That happens a lot, but not all the time.
Awesome. All right.
Oh, and there was one other piece about that, which was the information, I think. Can you restate that part of the question?
Oh, let me open it back up again. I closed it down. Yeah, I know. No, just ensuring all requirements and info is identified before any work starts happening, like how critical that is. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Rachel.
That's fine. I would add one thing. It's like doing the mise en place when you're cooking, right? You know what you're making. You have to have all your ingredients lined up, right? You don't want to be going and grabbing your shallots in the middle while something's burning over here. So
I love that analogy.
You all had some amazing analogies today. I love the scaffolding. That comment was a good one earlier. I'm going to be watching the recording to get a bunch of those and maybe at some point tease them into future conversations. So Lucy, all good on the question side. I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Yeah. Go ahead. We have 1 minute left, so I'll pass it off to you.
Rachel and Maya, honestly, like, I'm pinching myself that we get to spend this time together. You all are, I mean, just an inspiration to me, to be candid. And the team, the culture, I think, is aspirational. I hope folks in the room have gotten a lot out of this. So thank you, a huge thank you. We are going to have you back. I'm going to make sure that happens. I'm also super excited because we get to travel overseas for our next customer spotlight. We are showcasing a company called Kimball Tech. They're in the UK. So for anyone that's international overseas, for the next one, we're really excited to have them on. And of course, we'll be sending all the follow-ups, including things like that little process YouTube video that Rachel had mentioned. So if you all want to start diving into this more in your own businesses, you'll be able to do that. So want to say a huge thank you to everyone. Thank you, Rachel, Maya. Keep doing the amazing work your teams are doing at PV Squared. Lucy, thank you for leading us through this, and take care, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.